In the hidden corners of history, there exists a brotherhood so feared, so mysterious, and so surgically precise that their name became immortalized in every language as the symbol of the perfect assassin. For centuries, their existence was whispered in fear by kings, generals, Crusader knights, sultans, and emperors, because once the Hashshashin marked a man for death, no fortress, no army, and no power on earth could save him. Their story is not just about blades and shadows. It is about espionage, infiltration, psychological warfare, and the creation of an intelligence network so advanced that even today's agencies, Mossad, CIA, MI6, still study their methods. And today, we pull this dark legend from the fog of myth and reveal the real, historical truth behind the Persian Assassins, the Brotherhood that rewrote the rules of covert operations long before modern espionage existed. But before we descend into the fortress of Alamut and uncover the methods that made the Hashshashin unstoppable, do this one thing for me. Subscribe, because this channel is building something rare, an archive of the world's most secretive, most dangerous intelligence operations. If you're fascinated by shadow wars, elite operatives, and the hidden machinery of global power, then you're in the right place. Now, let's begin. The story starts in the 11th century, when the Islamic world was fractured by political conflict, religious divisions, and the rise of unstoppable military powers like the Seljuk Empire. In this chaos, one man saw an opportunity, a man who would become one of the greatest strategic masterminds in history, Hashshashin Sabah. Not a warrior, not a king, but a scholar, a thinker, and a genius in psychological warfare. After years of travel, study, and political manipulation, Hashshashin identified the perfect stronghold from which to build a new power structure, a fortress so high in the Persian mountains that it seemed carved out of the sky itself. Its name was Alamut, meaning the eagle's nest, and from this isolated citadel, he would create an organization of elite operatives capable of influencing empires. Without ever commanding an army, Hashshashin understood something revolutionary. Brute force was primitive, inefficient, and unpredictable. Empires crumbled not by swords, but by removing the right individuals at the right moment. Instead of raising armies, he built an intelligence network. Instead of training soldiers, he trained infiltrators. And instead of fighting chaotic wars, he executed precision operations with a clarity and discipline that the world had never seen before. He recruited young men, often the sons of farmers, villagers, or minor officials, who showed exceptional intelligence, loyalty, or resilience. These recruits were brought to Alamut, where they underwent psychological conditioning, religious teaching, linguistic training, and physical discipline. They learned patience, silence, the art of disappearing into the world. They were trained to become merchants, scholars, soldiers, servants, or whatever role their infiltration required. They were masters of disguise long before disguises were considered an intelligence tool. And Hashshashin taught them something else. The mission was everything. No escape, no betrayal, no fear. Once assigned a task, an initiate would follow the target for months, sometimes years. They lived inside enemy cities, inside palaces, inside military camps, gathering information, earning trust, waiting for the perfect moment. These operatives didn't strike in darkness like other killers. No, the Hashshashin struck in daylight, in public, in front of witnesses. Their message was simple and terrifying. We are everywhere. You cannot hide. Their assassinations were precise, symbolic, and deeply psychological. They used blades, never poison, never bows, because they wanted the act to be personal, intentional, and unavoidable. This method created a reputation more powerful than any army. When a political leader woke up with a dagger placed beside his bed, no guards killed, no door broken, no alarm raised. That was enough. The message was clear. We could have killed you, but we chose not to this time. Many rulers immediately abandoned plans against the Nizari Ismailis. Others paid heavy tribute, and some simply disappeared from political life forever. What's fascinating is that their operations were not chaotic violence. They did not kill randomly. They targeted individuals whose removal would reshape political landscapes. Today we call that high-value target elimination, a core strategy used by modern intelligence agencies. But the Hashshashin were the first to perfect it. You must understand something important. Much of what the world thinks about the Hashshashin is the result of Crusader propaganda and later European writers who filled their stories with fantasy. Hashshash-induced hallucinations, superhuman loyalty, magical rituals. But the reality is even more chilling. They were not drug fanatics. They were disciplined operatives with unparalleled training and mental control. Their loyalty came not from illusions but from belief, ideology, and a sense of purpose that Hazen instilled from day one. Let's go deeper into how they operated. An assassin would receive a mission directly tied to political strategy. He would integrate into society quietly, often living an ordinary life in enemy territory. He could become a servant inside the home of the target, a monk in a Christian monastery, or a soldier in a Seljuk garrison. Once fully embedded, he waited, sometimes for years, studying the target's habits, routines, security, weaknesses. When the time came, the strike was sudden, silent, and public. The operative rarely escaped, because escape was not the goal. The goal was the message. And because these missions were so psychologically devastating to political leaders, entire regions refrained from attacking the Ismaili state for decades. But perhaps even more impressive than their assassination tactics was their intelligence-gathering network. They built webs of informants across Persia and Syria, inside courts, markets, mosques, caravans, and military structures. They knew what their enemies planned long before armies marched. They were experts in rumor, information flow, coded communication, and early forms of arcane encryption. They were ghost-like watchers in a world that didn't understand the concept of surveillance. This is where their legend truly begins, because while other powers fought with swords and armies, the Hashshashin fought with knowledge, fear, and silence. Their intelligence reports traveled across mountains faster than most armies. Their spies recorded details as small as the sleeping habits of governors, the political tensions within dynasties, and the secret alliances formed between Crusader leaders. In many ways, they were the first modern intelligence service. Yet, for all their power, they were also vulnerable. Their state was small. Their enemies, Turks, Crusaders, Mongols, were vast. Their dominance relied entirely on precision, secrecy, and psychological superiority. And as long as that balance existed, they were untouchable. Before we continue, if you're still watching, then you're exactly the kind of person this channel is made for. So hit the like button to push this video into the algorithm. Your support helps this channel bring more hidden operations, classified histories, and shadow world stories into the light. Now, back to the story. Their most famous targets included viziers, emirs, Crusader commanders, and even religious leaders. The death of Nizam al-Mulk, the powerful Seljuk vizier, shook the entire region. But what's even more startling is that many assassinations were not direct kills. Often the Hashshashin simply demonstrated their access, leaving rulers terrified and compliant. This psychological approach turned empires into pawns without ever drawing a blade. Their training also included survival tactics, lockpicking, escape techniques, poisoned knowledge though rarely used, language mastery, and sometimes even basic medical skills to treat themselves deep behind enemy lines. Modern special forces operators would immediately recognize elements of their training. And then there's Alamut itself, the fortress that symbolized the heart of their power. From its balconies one could see miles of mountains. Its libraries contained rare manuscripts. Its training halls echoed with recitations of philosophy, discipline, and strategy. Many claim Alamut held secret gardens, hidden chambers, and ritual spaces, though historians debate the details. But one thing is unquestionable: Alamut was more than a fortress. It was a laboratory for the creation of the world's first elite covert operatives. To understand the true power of the Hashshashin, we must step inside the fortress that shaped them. The legendary citadel of Alamut, hidden among impossible cliffs. Alamut was not just a stronghold. It was a factory of loyalty, discipline, and psychological transformation. Inside these walls, every new recruit began a journey that stripped away his former identity and rebuilt him into a precise, unshakable weapon. Life inside the fortress was strict and controlled. Silence was expected, obedience was absolute, and every action was monitored. But this was only the first layer of the transformation. Hashshashin believed that the mind was the sharpest blade a man could carry. The earliest stage of training focused entirely on psychological conditioning, teaching recruits to abandon fear, detach from worldly desires, and devote themselves entirely to the mission. They were trained to believe that their purpose was greater than their lives, and this made them fearless and impossible to intimidate. Once mentally conditioned, they were taught the most essential skill of all, infiltration through disguise. The Hashshashin did not strike like ordinary warriors. They walked directly into enemy fortresses as merchants, monks, servants, or travelers. They could blend into any environment, mimic accents, adopt local customs, and patiently wait for the perfect moment. Some infiltrations took days, others months, and a few lasted years, all for a single strike. Physical training was equally demanding. Recruits practiced climbing cliffs, crossing rooftops silently, and navigating impossible terrain. They learned to use the dagger, their signature weapon, with surgical precision. Rather than brute force, they mastered speed, agility, and accuracy. Every movement was calculated, every strike deliberate, and when the Grand Master finally deemed a recruit ready, he was presented with a single dagger, a symbol of both responsibility and sacrifice. No armor, no shield, no army behind him, only his courage and his mission. This moment marked the birth of a true Hashshashin. The true legacy of the Hashshashin is written not in the walls of their mountain fortresses, but in the silent, calculated strikes that reshaped empires. Their missions were not random killings. They were meticulously orchestrated acts of psychological warfare designed to shake entire kingdoms. Each assassination demonstrated mastery of patience, disguise, and absolute dedication. And in the dark centuries of the Crusades, when armies clashed and empires crumbled, the Hashshashin emerged as the invisible force that kings feared more than any battlefield. To truly understand their power, we must examine how a single assassin could infiltrate the heart of a city pass, through layers of guards stand at arm's length from a powerful ruler, and deliver a strike that rippled across continents. Their brilliance lay in transforming impossible missions into inevitable outcomes. And among their many operations, a few stand out as masterpieces, missions so daring, so precise, that even their enemies recorded them in awe. One of the most legendary operations was the assassination of Nizam al-Mulk, the Grand Vizier of the Seljuk Empire. Known as one of the most influential political minds of the Islamic world, Nizam al-Mulk was heavily protected, surrounded by guards, courtiers, and spies. Yet the Hashshashin penetrated his security not through force, but through deception. According to chroniclers, a lone assassin disguised himself as a wandering Sufi mystic, humble, unthreatening, and spiritually respected. He spent days blending among the holy men who regularly met with the vizier. And then, on a quiet October evening, he approached Nizam al-Mulk during a routine gathering. In a movement faster than most could comprehend, the disguised dervish pulled out a dagger and struck. Before the surrounding guards even understood what had happened, the man had vanished into the chaos, leaving one of the most powerful political figures dead. It was a message written in blood. No man, no matter how protected, stood beyond the Hashshashin's reach. But the Hashshashin did not only target political leaders, they went after military giants as well. Their attempt on Saladin, the legendary Muslim general who would later recapture Jerusalem, remains one of the boldest infiltration missions ever recorded. Saladin was no ordinary commander. He was heavily guarded, surrounded by elite warriors, and constantly on the move. Yet during one of his campaigns, as he slept inside his own tent within a fortified camp, he awoke to a chilling discovery: a dagger placed beside his pillow, with a note from the Grand Master of Alamut. The message was simple: "We could have killed you." The assassin had entered a guarded camp, slipped into Saladin's tent, stood inches from the sleeping general, and left without being detected. This was not a failed assassination. It was a psychological blow. Saladin immediately strengthened relations with the Hashshashin afterward, choosing alliance over death. The operation proved that sometimes the Hashshashin didn't need to kill. Simply reminding someone that they could was enough to bend the course of history. Another mission that shook the entire Crusader world was the assassination of Conrad of Montferrat, a man poised to become king of Jerusalem. Conrad was heavily protected and constantly guarded by elite Crusader soldiers. Yet two assassins entered his city disguised as Christian monks, blending so perfectly that no one suspected a thing. They waited patiently, gathering intel, and earned the trust of locals. Then, on a quiet afternoon, as Conrad walked through the streets, the monks approached him with peaceful smiles, and the next moment, steel flashed. Conrad fell dead before his guards could react. Both assassins were captured and executed, but the mission succeeded. The death of Conrad changed the political landscape of the Holy Land, affecting alliances, treaties, and even the progression of the Third Crusade. What armies could not achieve, the disciplined assassins accomplished in seconds. But not all missions succeeded. Some became legendary precisely because of their difficulty and the demonstration of unwavering devotion. One such story is that of the assassination attempt on Count Raymond II of Tripoli. The assassin infiltrated his city with extraordinary patience, studying guard patterns, routes, and the Count's daily habits. When the moment finally arrived, the assassin struck, severely wounding Raymond. Though the Count survived, the psychological impact was tremendous. If a ruler inside a fortified Crusader stronghold could be reached by a lone infiltrator, then no fortress was truly safe. Panic whispered through courts and castles. Kings increased their guards. Knights slept with daggers. Some rulers refused to meet strangers. The Hashshashin had successfully weaponized fear. The brilliance of the Hashshashin lay in their ability to combine espionage, psychology, and deadly precision into a single art form. They knew that killing a ruler was not just removing a person. It was destabilizing an entire power structure. And so they chose targets carefully, focusing on those whose death would fracture alliances or halt invasions. Their actions were strategic, their motives calculated. Unlike common assassins, they did not kill for money or personal gain. They killed for political equilibrium, for survival, and for the grand design of their enigmatic leader, Hashshashin. Even their methods were revolutionary. They refused to use poison, believing it was cowardly. They refused to attack from a distance, seeing arrows as impersonal. They insisted on killing targets face to face, a decision that carried enormous risk but also delivered a clear message. The Hashshashin are not shadows, they are inevitability. This approach created an aura of supernatural fear around them. Many believed they possessed mystical powers or divine protection. Tales of their bravery and precision spread across Europe and the Middle East, often exaggerated by terrified enemies. Some Crusader knights described them as men who do not fear death, while others claimed they could appear and disappear like ghosts. The most startling element of their operations was the patience displayed. A Hashshashin might spend months posing as a local, learning the habits of the target, blending into the environment, and waiting for the perfect moment. They studied human behavior, recognizing patterns that even bodyguards overlooked. And if a mission required years of undercover life, they accepted it without hesitation. Their devotion to the mission was total. They believed in their cause with unshakable loyalty. And while history often portrays them as cold killers, the truth is more complex. Within the walls of Alamut, recruits were taught to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. They were trained to value discipline, intelligence, and precision over brutality. A successful mission never required chaos, only a single, well-placed strike. Their real power was not in the dagger, but in the fear that followed it. Rulers slept restlessly, often imagining a Hashshashin standing silently in the corners of their chambers. Entire armies hesitated before attacking territories linked to Alamut, and neighboring empires preferred treaties over war, simply because they feared waking a silent enemy they could not see. As the Crusades raged on, the Hashshashin continued their operations, quietly shaping outcomes behind the scenes. They were not kings, generals, or commanders, but they influenced them all. Their role in geopolitical strategy was subtle yet profound. When history books speak of shifting borders, broken alliances, or sudden changes in leadership, the invisible hand of the Hashshashin is often present. Their legacy remains one of the most fascinating in the world of espionage. Modern intelligence agencies study their techniques, infiltration, psychological dominance, misinformation, patience. Even centuries later, their operations are considered masterpieces of strategy. And perhaps that is why the Hashshashin continued to captivate historians and storytellers alike. They were not just assassins, they were architects of fear, masters of disguise, and pioneers of political warfare. In an age ruled by brute force, they proved that a single silent blade could be more powerful than an entire army. Their story is not merely a tale of violence, but a lesson in discipline, loyalty, and an unbreakable belief in a mission greater than oneself. For centuries, the Hashshashin operated like silent architects of the shadows, shaping the fate of empires with nothing but discipline, strategy, and an unwavering belief in their mission. Yet even the strongest fortress must eventually face a force capable of breaking its walls. As the medieval world shifted and new powers rose with armies, unlike anything the region had ever seen, the Hashshashin found themselves standing on the edge of history's greatest transformation. The Mongol Empire, a relentless wave of destruction that swept across continents, was now approaching the lands the Hashshashin had protected for generations. Their mountain strongholds, including the legendary Alamut, which had never fallen through siege or infiltration, now faced an enemy that did not fear death, diplomacy, or intimidation. The Mongols would not be scared by a dagger placed beside a pillow, nor would they retreat upon receiving a warning. Their approach was simple: total domination through overwhelming force. When the Mongol general Hulagu Khan began his campaign against the Nizari Ismaili state, it marked the beginning of the end for the Hashshashin's physical empire. Their assassins could infiltrate courts and cities, but they could not stop the largest mounted war machine the world had ever seen. As Mongol armies advanced, they destroyed village after village, sending a message that resistance was futile. Even the Hashshashin, known for their psychological warfare, found themselves facing an adversary who did not negotiate. Alamut, the beating heart of the Hashshashin, stood tall as the Mongols surrounded it. Its walls, carved into the mountains, were considered unbreakable, but Mongol siege engines, fire, and relentless assault eventually overwhelmed the fortress. The fall of Alamut was not just the loss of a strategic base. It was the collapse of a centuries-old system, a culture, a legacy built on secrecy and precision. Reports say the Mongols destroyed libraries, archives, and centuries of knowledge preserved within the fortress walls, erasing much of the Hashshashin's recorded history. And yet, even in their fall, the Hashshashin displayed bravery. They resisted until the final moments, refusing to flee or surrender. Their physical world was crushed, but their legend survived, even after Alamut fell in 1256. The story of the Hashshashin did not end. Survivors dispersed into remote regions, continuing their operations in smaller, fragmented cells. Though weakened, they remained a psychological force. Rumors persisted that assassins still roamed the night, that disciples trained in the old ways continued their missions from hidden refuges. European Crusaders, who had long feared the Hashshashin, spread exaggerated tales across the continent, transforming them from a political faction into a near-mythical brotherhood of death-defying warriors. The term assassin itself, derived from the word Hashshashin, became etched into global vocabulary, symbolizing stealth, precision, and deadly intent. Over time, storytellers, explorers, and historians added layers of mystery to their legend. Some described them as supernatural beings who could move between walls. Others claimed they used mystical rituals or sacred substances to strengthen their courage. Many accounts were distorted, but they contributed to an enduring image, one of an elite, disciplined group that mastered the art of infiltration long before modern espionage existed. What makes the story of the Hashshashin so extraordinary is not merely their ability to kill, but their ability to influence. They proved that a small, strategically trained force could change the course of wars and destabilize empires. Their philosophy of targeted strikes over mass violence is still studied by military historians and intelligence agencies today. Modern special forces and covert units often echo the same principles that the Hashshashin perfected centuries ago: precision over chaos, intelligence over brute force, patience over recklessness. Their techniques, blending in with civilians, gathering long-term intelligence, striking at key individuals, laid the groundwork for the covert operations we see in the modern world. The return of their legend in contemporary pop culture shows how deeply their story resonates. Diplomats tread carefully, generals question their alliances, and rulers strengthen their personal guards, all because of the invisible threat the Hashshashin represented. Even today, the ruins of Alamut stand as a silent reminder of a forgotten world where strategy, secrecy, and ideology shape destinies. Visitors speak of a strange, heavy energy that lingers among the rocks, as if the spirits of the assassins still watch over the valley. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of their story. They may have been defeated physically, but their presence never died. They live on in the fear they once inspired, in the stories whispered across generations, and in the lessons they taught about the power of the shadow over the sword. The true brilliance of the Hashshashin lies not just in their missions, but in their legacy. A legacy that teaches us how a small, dedicated group can stand against giants, how precision can challenge power, and how belief can transform ordinary men into legends. Their impact shaped medieval politics, influenced the Crusades, and forever changed the meaning of covert warfare. And even after centuries, the world still remembers them as ghost-like figures who moved through history with silent steps and unwavering purpose. If the Hashshashin teach us anything, it is that power is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, sometimes it waits, sometimes it strikes once and changes everything. Their empire has long faded, but their methods and mythology continue to echo across time. And as we uncover their secrets and understand their world, we gain insight into how hidden forces shape human history, forces that rarely appear in the spotlight, yet influence everything around it. The story of the Hashshashin is more than a historical narrative. It is a reminder of how belief, discipline, and strategy can carve a path through even the most turbulent chapters of human civilization. And this story, rich with mystery and power, is only a glimpse into a hidden world that shaped the destinies of kings and empires. If you enjoy diving into this world of ancient espionage and want to explore more hidden histories, forgotten spy networks, and secret societies that shape our world, then make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next video is going to take us even deeper into the unseen side of history. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.